Brace yourself for the ultimate test, the ABSA Off-Road Championship, and fast-track yourself through the race with vehicle and asset finance from ABSA. Today, tomorrow, together. Go!
The ABSA Off-Road Championship presents the 2006 African Heritage Cross Country Rally. The host town of Polokwane was ready and primed to welcome the overseas drivers and local competitors who were contesting the 2006 African Heritage Cross Country World Cup. They included the Nissan pairs Sandok Kiz and Peter Cegledi from Hungary, and Moscow's Sergei Shmakov and Konstantin Mesheryakov. The African Heritage was to be contested over around 800 kilometers over 3 days, and the dry, dusty and rocky conditions around the Eysterbach Resort outside Polokwane was due to test the drivers, vehicles and crews to the limit, and then back again. Clerk of the course himself, a former national champion, Piet Swanepoel, briefed the drivers, and with that worried look on his face, it seemed as if he would have to take on the Bushveld as well. Three-time champ Hannes Grobler came and checked out his stablemate Kiz's car, and the Nissan hardbody certainly came up to his exacting standards. In the other Japanese stable, Mark Cronier and Chris Birkin and the easily distinguishable red, green and white on the Castrol Toyota team had their eye on a South African win.
I think today is going to be quite tough. It's quite chilly out there, and apparently the route is very tight and twisty, so we'll have to take it one step at a time and see what today brings us.
The twosome had some big plans for the race.
Yeah, it's essential for us to get as many Ks in as possible. You know, at the end of the day, we've got a bit of a catch-up game to go, but I think, you know, this will be a good base for us to work off of and give us some information.
The Cries were ready for some red-hot action despite the icy cold winter's morning on day one.
Hey, we're starting off ice cold here. It's Eysterbach is extremely cold this morning, and it's probably going to be that cold for the whole day, so we're going to make sure we put on a lot of warm clothes, overalls, and take enough to eat with us. And looking forward to the day. They've given us navigation on GPS, so it's the first South African race locally that we have GPS allowance, and that will in some way make it a bit easier, although the GPS doesn't show you which direction you must go, it just shows you the route. So if you're going in the wrong way, then you've got a problem. But there's a way around it. You must just know where the marshal points are, and then the arrow will show you which way to go.
If only it was that easy. For the Century Property Development team, their brand new Nissan Navara would be a warm haven out there.
Yeah, it's nice and cold this morning, so we're looking forward to getting going in the car. It'll be nice and warm inside. But I think we're just going to take it easy for today. So first time ever out in this car, and apparently quite a tight and technical route, so we're going to enjoy it.
For Naim Mosaji and the TTR Racing Jimco, it was also a first time out.
Well, it's actually Jimco, but it's our first racing, so we're actually just going testing. And we're learning the car because I've only done about 20 kilos so far. So this is basically just to get used to the car and preparing for the main race Saturday. So we're just going to take it easy and go at decent pace.
And that main race Naim was targeting was the Ford Motorrad 400, which was due to start on the Saturday. But first, on the Thursday, it was the start of the 2006 African Heritage Cross Country, and the lads were off to a few fast starts. Even though it was as cold as Russia, Shmakov clearly missed the snow of his home country and wrong-started early on. Clearly, the tall elephant grass was not as easy as the driven white snow. While Kiz and Cegledi sped by to take first place. But the water jump also got them worried, and they bypassed. Grenier and Birkin sped through with no worries. While Musaji with Rehan Vodjana riding shotgun showed scant respect for the H2O. And Corbett and his co-driver Jean Moore slowed down just enough to acknowledge that there was some wet stuff there. The marking out on the route left a little to be desired, and the navigators were under pressure to come up with the right answers. The Hungarian pairing was stuck early on, until the Russian moved past. The old riverbed was treacherous and could have meant getting stuck. It took a healthy measure of speed and cunning to get it just right. For the space frame vehicles, though, it was a no-brainer, and they enjoyed the loose sand and the level area to build up some speed. The Cries did just that. It was not a bridge too far for the Toyota and the Nissan as they raced side by side over the first day's long stretch. The ZIL buggy of the Muscovites was leading the T1 class championship in the 06 FIA Cross Country World Cup and were third in the overall standings. Therefore, a win here would have meant an awful lot to their title aspirations. For Musaji and Bodiana in Class A, their first outing in the Jimco was solid, and they were using it as time to get to know the car ahead of the last 4 races in the 2006 ABSA Off-Road Championship. The 2 experienced European racers from the RTL Motorsport Club are Paris, Dakar and FIA cross-country veterans, and even though they admitted that the conditions were very different for them, they were going well. Cronje also reveled in these circumstances, as did Corbett. The father and son pairing, Jan and Hendrik Kraai, in the Keymax Property Development BAT were putting together a solid opening day and were also trying to conserve the car at the same time. As for the slightly awkward-looking ZIL, the Russians were slowly getting to grips with the Limpopo surfaces and were piling on the pace. The 2 Nissans were shadowing each other every step of the way, in the first 2 places and trading blows. Cronje, who is currently racing well on the local rally circuit in South Africa, is developing his off-road skills in leaps and bounds, and the experience of Birkin in the jump seat is also doing him the world of good. The Keymax lads were firmly ensconced in 4th place. The Russians had clearly picked up an argument with the Limpopo rock, and the resultant loss was a front right wheel that needed some serious realignment. Corbett and Moore were enjoying their first outing in the brand spanking new Navara. They were having a ball and led all the way to the line, covering the 200-odd Ks fairly quickly.
Yeah, well, first time out for us in the new car. It went quite well. This morning we were lost and riding up and down the riverbed, but eventually managed to find the route, and we came in first. I think today we had less hassles than anybody else. Obviously we drove with a back rear puncture for quite a while. We couldn't figure out what was wrong with the car. Thought something was wrong and stopped to check out, and lucky for us it was just a puncture.
And indeed, even with the stop, they got a solid gap over Kes and Chekledi, who clocked up their finish.
There were some very interesting episodes, like some animals passing by, and Shandor was really amused to see a group of cows just passing, and one just turned back when he thought he could pass it, and he was frightened for a while, and they had interesting episodes during the section.
Vehicle and asset finance from ABSA, going the extra mile to get you financed.
One shot from victory.
And Solutions.
Day 2 of the FIA's 2006 African Heritage Cross Country Rally dawned as cool as the opening day. And as always, speed is everything, if not a bit more in South Africa.
Мы привыкли к высоким скоростям, у нас скорости там от 130 до 180, 190, и средняя скорость у нас на гонках уходит около 110 км в час, а здесь получилось только 50 вчера.
We're familiar with higher speeds, I mean between 130 kilometers and 180 kilometers, so the average speed in our races, which we're familiar with, are 100 kilometers approximately.
Да, для нас неожиданно стали эти вот муравейники, как там правильно называются, да, где живут муравьи или термиты, такие в траве скрытые препятствия, то есть мы к этому не привыкли, поэтому оторвали правое переднее колесо, чинились долго, ну, финишировали.
We never see and we didn't know about the big like beton termite houses, and it was really difficult for us because we destroyed a little bit the car because of this. So after it we had to rebuild the car a little bit, but now we know about them.
And they would never forget the lesson again, we bet. On day 2, the Nissan's crew had to make their move to cement their victory, and they looked even more confident with another 200 k's ahead of them. After some very long, small hours of the night work, the crew had got the buggy ready for action on day 2, and Shmakov and Mesheryakov were eager to take back the half an hour they were behind. Corbett was in the lead in the South African race for supremacy, and the Nissan was handling as impressively as it was looking. Cronje and Birkin in the Toyota Hilux were in control, but driving with discretion is the better part of valor, even though they wrong-slotted it here. Musaji was ever so slightly slower than normal, but he and his navigator ran into some technical problems and battled through the second leg's racing. The Cries were also feeling the pinch of the tough route, but had a strong drive in their Keymax bat. At the designated service point, virtually halfway through the day, there was some furious action as crews repaired, re-straightened, and just generally fapped to get the cars ready for the next few hours' worth of ordeal. Corbett did not have a good start to his day, but was, as always, very confident.
Well, it didn't run too well for us this morning. We started first out of the local runners, and unfortunately about 3 k's in we had a puncture on the back right and the wheel jammed on, so it took us about 5 minutes to take it off. But we're still 6 minutes in the lead on the international race, so I think we got a good chance.
In the Toyota Cup, there was nothing serious to repair, but there was enough to keep everyone occupied. After DSP, it was back on the road, and the Hungarian squad were on a mission. Kiss is one of the biggest Nissan dealers in his home country, and thus Nissan South Africa went out of their way to prepare his car for him here. The Russians were keeping the pedal to the metal in the Zol buggy, but their gearbox left them in the lurch, and they were battling to get it going properly. The Toyota Hilux SP was still sounding very smart, and Cronje was pushing it quite hard despite some body damage. 20 Ks into the last leg, and Corbett also suffered a similar fate as the Russian visitors, and that meant the end of his challenge for the overall title. But the Cries were very impressive and covered the second day in the fastest time for the special vehicles. Unfortunately for Sergei and Konstantin, the gearbox did eventually decide to give up the Ghost, and they were stuck. It would cost them 6 hours of repair penalties. Grenier and Birkin were on a tearaway mission and clocked the quickest time of the day for the 200k jaunt. While Kiz and Jack Lady in the Nissan Navara were leading the international event by a massive 5 hours all of a sudden. The Cries were very happy with their preparation for the Ford Motorrad 400 and pleased to keep the car on the road. But the win went to the Hungarian pair, who were happy with their day's work.
It was quite a hard week for Sandor because he had not so good sleep today, but as he got used to the race tempo, it was very nice, and the track is beautiful, and he's very happy with the car itself.
And so he should be. Nissan Motorsport manager Glenn Hall and his team had done a great job with the Navara. The Russians were just too happy to get the ZIL back to service and then proceeded to get a new gearbox into the vehicle so that they would stand a chance of racing again on day 3 in the third leg. Meanwhile, the Century Property lads were ironing out a few problems of their own.
Always with a new car, there's always teething problems. Unfortunately, the rack went. The steering rack went in about 20 k's into the loop and put us out. So for this loop, we've got a 2-hour penalty, which will put us at the back of the field, but we're still ready to run tomorrow.
And that is certainly the battle cry of the off-roaders. There's always tomorrow. Young Cry in the Kemax Property bat was happy with these days' toils behind the wheel.
Yeah, we had a good run. We started 5th this morning, and there was a couple of very nasty, dangerous turns just very early in. So I think maybe somebody made a mistake there, and then 20 k's in, we caught the Corbetts. They had a problem with their car, and eventually we came to a long river section where it's about 10 k's of river section, which was tiling. I mean, we just hammered this bat flat out, and I mean, it takes that river and that water splashes and whatever. You just see clean water. I mean, the water is nice and clean. You just go, you get a lekker shower every now and again, and eventually we came in 3rd, so we had a good day. We didn't push hard because we're lying 2nd in the national championship, and we want to make sure that we can race tomorrow again.
And it showed as the pair kept it simple yet quick. As for the TTR Racing Gymco crew, they were going well until they got fenced in.
Well, we had a good start. The prologue was great, very well marked. We were going very quick. We managed to pass one of the other Class Bs, and then we got close to Mark Corbett, so we had made up quite a bit of time. And 300 meters from the end, I think all our luck ran out, and we ran a bit wide on the last corner of the prologue, and we went through a fence. The whole fence tangled our rear wheel and eventually got us to a standstill. So it took us another 20 minutes to get it untangled and get over the line. So it looks like we're going to have to start it from the back tomorrow and push us out. And we're going for broke, basically. We want to finish and try and get a good position, hopefully.
Go! So after 400 k's of racing and another 400 to go during the last leg, which was incorporated into the Ford Motorrad 400 race, it was the Nissan enjoying a huge 5-hour lead in the international section, while Grenier and Birkin led the locals by half an hour. On the off day 3, there was a tough southern and northern loop ahead, just the same as the races in the 4th round of the ABSA Off-Road Championship, starting and finishing at the Eysterberg Resort, just outside Polokwane. Starting off next to the railway line, the men even 5 hours behind knew that just to keep it going meant that you had a chance of victory, as almost half the field had received lateness penalties, so all wasn't lost. The extreme dryness of the Limpopo province had caused havoc, and drivers were desperately trying to avoid riding in each other's dust. For Kiz and Chikledi, their clutch finally gave up the ghost and brought them to a grinding halt, to the consternation of the official. Cronje and Birken's Castrol Toyota was trusty as ever on the other hand, and the youngster kept it going superbly. The Cries were very happy with their second place in the international race, but were still mindful of their second place in the national championship tussle. Corbett's team did a great job of repairing the blue, red and yellow liveried Nissan, and they were certainly back in the thick of things. While Mosaji and Bodiana's luck were going to run out again with more mechanical failure. Kiz was desperate as he saw his chances for a historic South African win slip away, but the trusty Nissan pit crew were as always Trojans and worked on his car like worker ants preparing for winter. At the DSP, the feverish activity had a different pitch to it. The crews knew that this was the second last time that they'd have to give everything. Toyota's Mark Cronje felt that they just needed to get to the line, but it was tough.
Yeah, we're just taking it easy. The special vehicles are just really fast through the rocks and through the rough. So, yeah, we want to make the 400 Ks. We've been warned already, so I think it's important for us to get to the end.
Corbett and Moore again had a few problems of their own.
It's going well. We just got a few power steering problems, but otherwise we had to pass about 20 people because of the puncture on the time trial. But we're doing it right.
Meanwhile, the rest of the 70-odd competitors in the Ford Motorrad 400 were also out there competing after their prologue the previous day, and they were obviously a factor too. Cronje was going very well. And after overcoming their earlier problems, so were Corbett and Moore. The Cries were as consistent as ever. While the Russians, now in the lead, had to drive with care, yet not let the lead slip. A tall order in the tough bushveld conditions, made so much worse by the dry road and the tall grass. Mosaji was trying to nurse his vehicle around, but also suffered a 2-hour lateness penalty. Kiss and Chikledi tried as hard as they could and passed some of the SA National Championship backmarkers. Cronje and Birken's Toyota Hilux was singing along. While Corbett blitzed the field in the third leg special stage 5 and shot up from 43rd to 3rd in the national championship race. A phenomenal drive. It also hauled him up to 1st in the international racing category. Mosaji was sideways at times and kept plugging away. While the Russian pairing was staunch in a car which was not really built for the conditions they encountered in the Limpopo bush. Kiss had made a splash all along but could just not maintain, and the broken clutch meant that he kissed the win goodbye. At DSP, the Schmakov-Mezheyakov combination were happy to stretch the legs, while the crews worked feverishly. For the Nissan pit, there was not a lot to do but to check the normal and ensure that the spare tires and rims were all serviceable. And on the run in to home, the Russians only had to keep it going to say Nazdarovia. Meanwhile, the fourth leg national championship contenders were also churning up the road, and that made it even tougher for the African Heritage cross-country competitors. Conversely, it did make for better racing as the cross-country lads could keep time with fresher vehicles and fresh pilots too. Jan and Hendrik were well on their way to a solid showing in the ABSA Championship, as well as making a name for themselves in the FIA Championship. The Nissan of Kiz and Czech Lady was willing and able, but their lateness penalties cost them dearly in the end. And even though they were ahead of the Russian car in the run to the line, they were too far behind to make any real impression, and the Moscow crew just kept it nice and steady as she goes, Skipper. Corbett and Moore flew along and battered past all but 3 cars on their way to passing 40. A fine performance. While the Crows certainly impressed with their consistency over 3 very tough days. Now, an hour and 16 minutes behind, the Hungarians had resigned themselves to a second place, but their points haul was still enough to get them a handy position in the fight for championship log points. However, the Class T1 championship win, and thus almost an unassailable lead in the race for supremacy in the FIA series, went to Schmakov and Mezheyakov in the by now battered-looking Zul. At the line, Corbett and Moore surprised and delighted the SA fans with a fine win on the last leg, but it was a little too late.
Well, the first day out was quite nice because we had very similar terrain to what we're in today, and it got us used to the car. Obviously, the biggest thing is the left-hand drive, you know. We tend to bang the car on the right-hand side, sitting on the left-hand side of the car.
Is your navigator still speaking to you?
He's a bit nervous at the moment, but he's glad we came third.
And comments on the route out there?
The route was very tight today and rough, but luckily for us, a lot of people got lost ahead of us. So the navigating was perfect from a navigator side, and we managed to catch up a lot of positions. But just very rough today.
The Crows were home next and were also delighted with their drive.
Yeah, I think it helped us a bit. We knew exactly how the route markers marked it, and the GPS, we knew exactly how to work that. And I must say, Hendrik was, he was tops, eh? You can't beat the youngsters, eh? They are so fast. I drove the first half, and we were a bit slower, and since he took over, I mean, it was just flying to the finish. It was a great race. We enjoyed it, and thanks to everybody that contributed to making this success for us and for the organizers and everybody. It's been lekker.
The Hungarians were unlucky to have a mechanical failure at a critical time. Schmakov was very pleased with a drive that also was littered with mechanical failure.
Нет, мы сегодня спокойно ехали на доезд.
Today we drove really slowly and carefully, so that's why the car was okay, because our strategy was to arrive at the end, because we knew the provisional results. That's why our strategy was to economize the car.
To the victors, this spoils, and it certainly was 3 days' worth of bubbly at the end.
After we had that problem, we started to push extremely hard, just for fun, just to enjoy the car and the track itself. And we are very happy now that we are in the finish, and I think it will be seen in our results that this section we pushed very hard.
In the end, Smakov and Mezheljakov coming through in 20 hours and 43 minutes, a healthy lead over Kirs and Cegledi, and it was the father and son combination, the Cries, who were the only team that went without lateness penalties, finishing in 9 hours and 21 minutes. Go! All told, a great debut for the African Heritage Rally in South Africa. Let's hope we get the lads back here next year.
History has been made because we've had the first international non-tar event in South Africa, and it's gone very, very well. The competitors have enjoyed it immensely, and the South African competitors who took part in it have actually shown they don't have to stand back to the international people in any way, because they actually are capable of beating them in our own equipment.